So for those who are joining or people who will watch later, I need to introduce this amazing person. Donovan Taylor, correct?
Taylor
Yes.
Hall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Donovan
So,
Taylor.
you're a youth empowerment advocate, and you are a teacher and a coach and a speaker, and you do so many wonderful things. And I came across your video through probably like many others through Instagram, TikTok, social media, just in terms of how you were approaching the kids you were speaking with, and just how you were engaging with them, and this sense of like you were a teacher in the classroom, but you were empowering them to be themselves beyond just education in the classroom. Like the education is important, but it's how you're empowering them as human beings. And so I'm going to let you do the rest of your intro, besides the formal intro, for those of you, those people who may not know, and we'll take the conversation further. So yeah, have I introduced you properly, first of all?
Yeah, I was like, can I take that and put that on my website? Because I have such a hard time articulating. Like, if I'm talking, I got it, right? But the second that I have to write stuff out, it's like my whole brain just pops up. And you were just, when you were saying that, oh yeah, that's what I need to put. I think he did a beautiful job. Beautiful job. One of my boys who I've been doing the work with for a while, I taught him for 2 years. He's in here as well. So I'm super excited. I know.
Hey.
It's my boy.
That's that, and I saw your face light up, and I was like, maybe that
Yeah.
was what it was. That's beautiful. No,
Yeah.
that's really beautiful.
I get so excited. I've had a lot of kids recently reach out and be like, oh, I don't know if you'll remember me from like years ago. And I'm like, we talked every day for 2 years. Like, you really, I got like a tattoo for the kids at Impact. Like, you probably don't remember me. It's nothing. And I'm like, of course I remember. Like, I love you. Like, I didn't forget you. I think leaving teaching, one of the pluses of actually stepping out of the classroom was it was really hard. There's another one of them too. Hi, Alessandro. It's really hard to like put that much care, like love into groups of kids and to continue to do that. And so in a lot of my podcasts and stuff, like I've had people like say, tell teachers they should do this or they should do that. And I don't ever encourage teachers like to push themselves to do exactly what I do, because for me it wasn't even sustainable. Like, after teaching 4 groups of kids over the past 5 years, I love all of those kids. I'm worried about them. I don't know if they're doing well. I stay in touch with them, and it's like it wouldn't be sustainable. And so for me, shifting into, which is kind of like a segue into what I'm doing, shifting into like a bigger audience, like doing a TV show, it makes it so I can do the work and engage with kids, but not have to like invest so much of my like love and life forced into it. Because for a while it was like, it was difficult to keep that up. Like, I really, really, really felt like responsible for the community and stuff. So it was a really huge learning moment for me, getting to work that closely with a group of kids for so long.
And, I think that gets us straight into it, because I wanted to say that I think the importance, for those of you who may not know, like, check Donovan's videos out, like whether it's on his IG or the TikToks or YouTube or anywhere, just to see how he speaks with the students and with the kids. And so you get an idea of his style and his approach and what he's really about. But I want to go into this because what you're doing and the way that you're doing it, it's a holistic thing. It's not just like, this is how we should teach in the classroom, or like you said, that any teacher needs to go with this specific style, but like, really, this is how we should be dealing with our kids, as probably as parents, as families, like interacting as families as a whole. We need this method of communication with our adults, because they are also kids who probably weren't given that love and that space as well. So I mean, it's all the way through. So this doesn't just apply to the classroom,
Yeah.
or to the ways that are being taught, and it's so across the board. So I think anybody and everybody just watching how we're communicating. I think so many of us don't know how to communicate, and how to open space to have children and adults be vulnerable. And I think that's where your work is shifting to. That's where you're taking it to a broader space. And I think that's what this is really about.
Yeah.
So I want to go into, first of all, like, we'll go into, let's maybe just start with your background, because I know that you started out in Oakland, you're now in Virginia, you've been back and forth, and your personal journey from how it got, because I know that we've so many people interview you about that, but your own personal journey. But I want to take it more to the path that you're heading on now, because I
Yeah.
know that you want to speak on this non-traditional path and this route and even this image of being a soft teacher, if you will. So I know that's a very long thing, but we'll go into the parts that you specifically wanted to talk about that you don't get to talk about as much in terms of your method, approach, all that. So we'll go into it one by one, but I want you specifically to talk about the things that you wanted to talk about and also things that don't get talked about enough, maybe that you wanted to introduce. So this is about you. So let's go.
You're so good at facilitating.
And
I'm like, yeah, okay, lay it out. All right,
then,
I'm into it. Yeah, I'm really open about this stuff, and I think that what I'm learning about myself is I'm trying to create content, and I'm trying to shift from having these one-on-one or these group interactions with kids to like making like actually structured videos and stuff like that. It's been kind of tough for me because I realize I just do really well in spaces like this, where if I can speak, if I can have dialogue, if I can be part of a conversation, that's where I feel like I feel the most articulate with what I'm trying to say. So anything that we talked about, I'm game to talk about. It's been a while since we planned, so if you can help me kind of like jog my
oh
memory,
yeah,
because we talked a lot of stuff. So I'm ready. Whatever we gotta talk about.
So let's start with the fact that you didn't do the traditional teaching route.
Yeah.
You had said that like it's not like I came in. You mean you have your credentials and things like that, but and this image of even being a soft teacher. So let's start there.
Well, so when I was in college, I was in an acting program in college, and I liked theater. Like I did it as a minor, but I didn't really like it. There was this teacher that I worked with who had an acting company for kids, and she was like, "You should come be like a teacher in my after-school program." And I was like, "Who are you? Like what? Like I'm a joke. Like I'm a mess. Like do not do this to me. I have no experience with kids." And so she was like, "I'll pay you like $40." And I was like, "Okay, cool." I'd love to be there. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So I went, and within like 10 minutes, I was just playing games with the kids. And I was like, yo, this is actually like kind of fun. And so I stayed with that company for years, and I did a lot of other positive youth development programs. So there's a whole theory, a whole framework of youth development, which is called positive youth development, which is all about like the assets kids have, like building their character, building resilience, really learning their strengths. And if you're lucky, you get to participate in programs like that, but it's not widespread. So like the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, they do a lot of positive youth development. And so I started to kind of look at that stuff. But like I taught gymnastics, I taught kids how to fly drones, I taught public speaking, I taught college for like 2 years, I taught my own program. So I've taught a lot of positive youth development programs. And what I liked about it was I just feel like the main conversation we have about youth is, and I know that education is important. So a lot of times I feel like people think I'm saying we don't need education. That's not it at all. I just think that that's just such a small piece of like who a person is. And education is supposed to be about someone growing and growing their capacity and ability to learn, not about their identity, right? But when we think about academics with kids, like I have so many people say to me on comments like, tell these kids not to care about social media. They should be worried about their grades. I'm like, they're the same thing to me in a way. They're just another part of this kid's life that one is telling them they have to focus and they have to value on. So when you do positive development programs, I was getting to talk to kids about their character. I was getting to do like, personal goal setting with kids. And I just really liked that experience. So I struggled a lot as a young person, as a kid, and an adult with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, really had to disconnect from myself. And I talked about this briefly, but when I was in my early 20s, I became like suicidal. And when I didn't take my life, that's when I started to like look for tools, because I just wanted to know like how to fix me, basically, like what happened, how could I not feel like this anymore. And I started to learn a lot of tools that I just thought this would have helped me so much as a kid, right? Even if someone just like, if I had to go to a speaker at an auditorium and be mad that I'm in that, even if I just heard a couple of these lines and they stuck with me, they would have helped me out. And you think about like, we don't talk to kids about what's happening in their life. We don't talk to them about their struggle. We don't talk to them about like their inner kind of, and I just I just want to do that, you know? And so I started to teach, and then the school that I was at for 3 years in Oakland had a free teaching position where you didn't have to be credentialed and you can kind of teach whatever you're passionate about. And they let me teach. I keep getting messed up by the sun. They let me teach my program. And they asked me to get credentialed because I love the school, I love the community, but I was like, I can't get credentialed in the things I want to teach kids. And in a way, I feel like I am the teacher I am because I didn't get credentialed and because I didn't go through that path.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of forged my
Mm-hmm.
kind of theory of education and did my own research and tried my own kinds of stuff. Like, and it's just been interesting. I've been for so long, what feels like by myself. I have support, friends and family, amazing. But just in terms of like practitioners, like I haven't had a lot of like people I've met who do the same thing. And so since the Today Show thing happened, I'm able to talk with people like you about this. And it's just amazing to me because it needs to be given. So I think we need to think about how we view and treat youth in general. It's really important. And I think the pandemic was the first time people really kind of even paid attention to kids' well-being. But I've been focused on this for years. So I kind of just use that as my opportunity to slide in and be like, I heard you're worried about kids' well-being. Well, let me introduce you to some stuff that might work. And it's just been a very like wild and weird path through very dark forest. Like, but I'm forging my own way. I feel really like grateful to be in the position that I'm in, to kind of see things manifesting and like working out, you know?
Yeah, I do. And you hit on so many important
I
points.
know.
I'm gonna get, no, you do you. Cause I think that you just need to speak openly and in flow. And, I think that the most important thing is what we talked about briefly last time. There's so many things we talk about. But in terms of how knowledge is viewed, what's of value in the education system is viewed. And often we look at the education system, it's like, I heard from somebody recently, and I saw in a video that it's almost modeled after the industrial period,
Yeah.
like in this industrial factory model of just working like this 9 to 5, just like doing what the job is and going out and not really understanding, well, what is knowledge beyond these subjects? What is knowledge of the self and empowerment of the self? And as I talked about with you last time, that we come from backgrounds, whether there's indigenous backgrounds, Indian backgrounds that I'm aware of, yogic backgrounds, where they speak of the knowledge was there's like, it's like the little knowledge and the higher knowledge. And the little knowledge, not to put a hierarchy, it was more like the other knowledge was the subjects, like your mathematics, knowing the universe, geometry, science, these subjects, if you will. But the higher knowledge was the knowledge of the self and knowing the self and understanding the self and not learning out of tradition and habit, not simply understanding what is my experience is my truth, questioning everything, even the thing that you're being taught, understanding the power that we have as an individual. And that's the knowledge. But in this system, it's more like stop, listen, and learn. Like, but no, not even listen. Like, I'm not hearing you. Like, just learn, like digest, regurgitate, and like just know and grade. It's based on grades. Yep. And not so much did I learn something? Did I take something in and did I grow? And what more am I interested to go down the line of rather than just this grade pass out factory system? And so what you're doing is basically taking the importance of that, not through only your own experiences, because in your videos I've seen how I'm like, literally, like you said, I was like, I wish I had that growing up. Like, can I have Donovan as my teacher now? Can I have like, can I have you now talk to me like on a daily basis? Like, so many adults need this, you know? And so I think that it's so important because you're bringing it in a space where they often might not get it, and virtually through your videos. And in that space, by the way, I do want to add, because we talked about this, that you to ask for permission from the students, their parents, to make sure this is something the program allowed you to do. So it's not like I'm doing this for likes and views. Like, this is like, hey, this is a great thing that you're sharing. And the kids' responses, just their voices, just to see how you're doing this. It's amazing because you're asking them where they're at. It's not you telling them. It's not you ordering them. It's not you saying good or bad. It's you checking in with them. And what I found so moving and so beautiful is the videos, especially where they've done something great and you take them aside and you're like, hey, do you know why I've taken you aside? And to anybody that's like, oh, they're in trouble, they've done something, you're like, I want to acknowledge that you're doing really well. You're speaking up. They're coming into class. Your numbers are showing. Like the work speaks for itself. Is something glitching? Did something glitch?
Yeah. So
Ah,
sometimes can you,
I can hear you. Yes.
okay, if someone calls my phone live, then the audio is messed up. So I was just afraid that was going to happen. So sorry about cutting you off, but I think like what I'm learning about education is that it's a place where kids are naturally searching for identity, right? That's what they're doing as they push away from their parents, they push away from their families. They like latch onto their friends. They start to look. They have hobbies. They have passions suddenly because they're trying to identify themselves. And the only thing we're telling them to really look at is their academics. So what happens is, like I said earlier, academics becomes about identity, and identity equals safety, right? And so if you are someone who is from a marginalized identity, you understand that your identity is linked with your safety, right? But there's also this academic, like it feels like danger in a way. It feels like threat to some kids because they don't find themselves in academics. And so suddenly it's like I'm not part of this system, I'm not valued in this space, then it's I push away from it, right? Or you get the kids hyper focus on their grades because they're doing the right thing. But again, a lot of times their motivation is more extrinsic motivation, like wanting to make people happy or not get in trouble, versus the actual desire to want to learn and grow. The Industrial Revolution thing, when I learned about that, I was like, it makes sense. Like you're creating workers, right? You're creating workers. And for me, I don't I just don't care. Like I know that grades are important in a sense that they help us measure where we're at, but the way that we value grades, I don't care about that. I don't care about that. And it's shocking to me when I started saying these things to kids, seeing their reactions around getting positive feedback from a teacher, right? Whether they liked me or not was just wild to me. But then it just made sense because I had maybe two teachers my entire life who pulled me aside and had a conversation with me about my integrity or my humanity. Once was someone calling me out, which I'm forever grateful for Mr. Barker for doing that, for calling me out one day. And then the other time was a positive thing. And those moments were kind of like embedded in my head. And so then I said, I want to just do this with as many kids as I can because I don't know what's going to stick. I don't know what they're going to remember. But I know if kids are asking themselves, who am I? And they have no positive thing to look to, right? Then what they're going to focus on the bad stuff. They're going to feel disconnected from themselves. And I just want kids to feel comfortable in their skin. I want kids to feel safe in knowing who they are and understanding that education is a part of their growth, but it doesn't define who they are. Just like your work doesn't define who you are. A lot of people lift up my work, but because we're in an individualistic community, people will say like, it's you, it's you, it's you. For me, it's not just me. It's so many people out here who are doing these work, micro communities for their schools, for their kids, for their friends, and they all do it differently. My strengths that I trained when I learned what they were, I trained them, they lend themselves to bigger audiences. It doesn't mean that I'm bigger or better than other teachers. It just means that my strengths, my communication skills, strategic strength, right? My woo, like that helps me bring in larger groups and I can talk to larger people. But I it's about the work. It's about the work. And I think that that's the conversation that needs to be had. And I get to have so many conversations with people who are like, oh, you're amazing. I love hearing about you. And then I ask about them and then they tell me these amazing things about the communities that they're in and they're doing. And I'm like, yo, you're amazing. What? Like, this is amazing. So I feel very lucky and I'm in this, fine place right now because I'm going to make a TV show. And that's my goal. I want to be a public figure for kids. And I have to kind of use lifting myself up as an individual to then lift.
Mm.
That's tough. That's tough. You know what I mean? That's tough because I don't want it to be
It's almost the antithesis because it's not what you're trying, because you hit such an important point, and this goes across every field. I think it's about the work.
mm-hmm.
Like it's not about, yes, you may bring a personality, a style, we all bring, that's the uniqueness of us.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's communal thing, like you said. It's not, we're in an individualistic society that focuses more on that rather than, because we have communal and individualistic background society, right? This one tends to be more on the individualistic side for the most part. But it's like it wouldn't happen without the community. Do you know what I mean? Like it's about the kids. It's a continuous, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
And it filters through and goes back again. So You're absolutely right. It's about the work. And like I'm in the entertainment industry as well, so I completely understand this because there's causes I really care about. And it's like, I just don't want to be the one like, I'm the face of this, or
Yeah.
like it's about me. But it's maybe the way I say something or the way that I do something. But it's like it's almost a catch-22 because it's like you have to push yourself forward in that public space. But you're like, but I'm not trying to make it about me, but I know it's such a weird thing to balance that. You're so right. Yeah.
Well, and so I'm like, I'm making, I can't say too much because my production team told me to stop doing that. But, I basically have like 4 TV show ideas I want to do with. And there's the one that I want, which is like, I want this to be the educational entertainment show that kids are hyped about, that kids want to be on, that have like a really mature kind of feeling, like Red Table Talks kind of feeling, right? But for kids and stuff. But
Oh.
then I'm thinking like, kids don't know who I am, right? And if I need to lift myself to the place where kids want to come on my show, I got to build credibility. And so now the show that I'm pitching is still like an educational entertainment show, but it's more for the family because right now the people who are really resonating with my work are the adults, right? And the more that I've pursued wanting to do this bigger vision for kids, the more that I am working with adults and the more that I'm talking with adults who are parents or youth advocates or teachers or psychiatrists or therapists who want to do this kind of stuff with kids. And so I'm have to be like, I have to have strategy around it because I'm like, okay, if I have this show where I'm hosting it and it's like a very heartwarming show and families love it and they watch it, then suddenly credibility. And then when I have more credibility, I'll have more power and control for this really ambitious show that I want to do. Right now, kids don't really know me. And I want to get to the point where kids see me in public, want to talk to me, say, I use this practice or I know who you are and stuff like that. Right now, it's not there. And so I'm having to grapple a lot with my own kind of identity in this work, letting go of stuff, kind of being open and being curious. But it's tough. I find that the closer I'm getting to my dream, the further I feel away from kids. And that's, I've
Wow.
said that really out loud to
No,
many people.
that's powerful. Like
Yeah,
it's deep.
tough.
It's come from a real place, you know.
Tough. It's tough. I mean, when I first got here too, I was so depressed, and I was thinking like, where's the joy in my life? Where's like the happiness? I can't find it. And I realized like I had so much joy in my life when I was working with kids. Like that's it. Like I laughed so much with them. I felt human connection, right? Like working with kids and other youth advocates really about this work. So much of my personal joy was wrapped up in my work. So when I lost that ability to be that with kids, I was like, oops, no joy for me, right? And I've had to relearn my own thing because that's an issue of, making this work about myself. So I'm trying to, in a lot of ways, build this work. It's like a baby. It's like a toddler, right? But it's not me. It's not me. It's not me.
I know literally like I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's so important because oh God, it left my brain for a second, but it's like because when it's organic in that space in the classroom, even with those kids, when you first started out, you didn't know them. You had to make that relationship. You had to build that trust, create that safe space. And it's like you're removed from the thing that is the thing that brought you to where you are because you're not doing that thing that way anymore. And it's like you're talking about it, but you're not doing it anymore. So it's like that juice of that joy of what that was is not the same.
Yeah.
And so I understand where you're coming from, but it's about how do you take that to a different space and a different level on a broader scale. And that's what you're working on right now. And that's difficult to navigate.
Well, and it's interesting too because I use the tools I teach kids. That's my thing. This is why I teach it because I use it and I believe in it. And I've seen the work it's done in my life, the work it's done in people's lives. And I'm having to, I was just talking with a group of, this feels like a tangent, but it's part of it. But I was talking with this woman who works at a high school with these seniors. It's like a leadership-based high school. And basically these kids put on these service projects and they do these like huge things as kind of a senior project. These are the kids who are like really into their education, right? And not like upper class or privilege. I mean, just the way that this community is built, like these kids can't show up, but they're pushing themselves so hard. They're struggling so much with anxiety and with mental health. And my thing is like, hold on, Lucy. My thing is like, I don't want kids to burn themselves to the ground for a cause, right? Just like I don't burn myself to the ground for this work. This work is really important to me, but I want to have a life. I want to have passions. I want to have a relationship. I want to have family. I want to go places. Stuff. But I've been so deeply connected to this work for a while that all of that took kind of the back burner. And if I was talking to my student about this, this is what I would tell them is like, where's the space for you in this work? And so I'm in this really interesting kind of redefining myself, recreating myself moment in my career and personal life. But the thing that's been the toughest is just not having the kids. And then when they message me and say like, you remember me or I miss you and stuff, I miss all of them. They were a beating heart for me. But I got to think now about the bigger picture and the kids that I will help that I won't ever know, you know, and that's tough, right? I want to be in there. But I can't. I'm one person. I can't do that. So that's why I realized doing a TV show, doing more content creation for kids on a larger scale was better for me personally, because being one-on-one, being in the community, it took everything out of me. I love those kids. I would not do a single thing about how it went, but it took a lot. It took a ton from me. I gave way more than I was even supposed to. You know, like my principal said that to me one time, where he was like, "You don't have to put this much pressure on yourself." But I just didn't know. You know, I'm like, I'm here. I love them. I know them, right? They open up to me, right? I've built these relationships. I one time I stormed out of our team meeting because one of my coworkers made a comment about one of the kids and said, "That's the kid. I'll never remember his name. He's like forgettable," is what he said. And that kid had just told me like 2 weeks before that his biggest fear was people not remembering him. He feels unseen all the time.
Oh,
And
whoa.
I lost it. I like lost it, left, and everyone's like, "Yo, chill, right? Like, chill out." Like, and I just couldn't do it. So, being in the education space was hard. Having to teach kids about growth and teach them about their humanity and teach them about these like inner assets, and then having to grade them around it, like, felt so just. It just felt weird, you know. It felt weird, and I don't know what this work looks like in schools. School systemic change with schools is a huge, big thing. I don't even know, but I just know I'm one person, and I can use my skills and my experience and my passion to help whoever I can, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's just being like, I can only do what I can do.
And
And
I think that's, I'm sorry, were you going to say something? I don't want to cut you off.
1 second, Lucy.
No, you're good.
Lucy, stop, baby. Sorry.
Okay, hi, Lucy.
She wants to
No,
conversation.
it's all good. Wants to make an appearance, I will say hello, of course.
Hold on, hold on. There she is.
Oh, hi. Hi, boo-boo. Oh, how sweet.
But
Always welcome in the conversation. But I did want to say that that's such a huge important point, and it kind of transitions to where we're going with this, because like you said, I mean, teachers are doing, like, it's so hard for the teachers. You know, there's so many teachers out there trying to do so much good work, and they're in a system which is really difficult to navigate. And many of us are aware of that in different levels, you know what I mean? But at the same time, for you, you're like, look, I don't know if I can change a whole system. Yeah, there's some things that you can do, but what can I do that reaches the most peaceful people, students possibly, and also, you know, in a way that where I feel like I'm making the most change or making an effect.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember us last time speaking that you said that, you know, kind of always vision yourself to kind of go to this space. You know, like it wasn't like you were going to be a teacher forever per se. This kind of came to you and you kind of transitioned, and we spoke, and something was really important that you had mentioned. Look, how can I take this global? You know, and we talked about this intersectionality between cultures and how important that is, because it varies the conditions and the spaces and the different cultures and how we talk to our kids, and that our methods, or these methods that maybe seem too liberal or progressive or too out there for some, even though they may have been ancient ways, they are not that way due to colonization, westernization, globalization, whatever down the line, so many different filters, that it varies, and that one method isn't necessarily going to work for all in all spaces. But the fact that you're like, hey, how can I take this bigger in the space within, like, let's say within your town or city in the States or in the nation, and then even broader, and have this kind of approach, but how that will vary culture to culture.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think that let's, like, what were your thoughts on, like, because I was very interested to hear when you were thinking of these 4 TV shows. So like I heard the like the Red Table Talk, that was really, really fascinating. But you said you're gonna have to go groundworks like before that. So kind of where do you envision this trajectory, if you will? Or like, 'cause it may, I don't know how much you can talk or not talk about
Yeah,
that, but like we'll go into like the differences between the cultures, because that was a very important topic we brushed on
yeah.
last.
I think like I'm just having like a little bit of an aha moment just thinking about this because I think a while ago when I first started doing this work with kids, I was like, I want to be an author. I want to be a speaker. Like that's the route I'm taking. And I tried really hard to make things look exactly like I thought they would look, and it's never gone that way.
Yeah.
My kids made me make a TikTok. They were like, "You're always doing dumb stuff in class. Like, make a TikTok." And so if you go back to my TikTok, the first like I don't know 3 rows were just really silly videos of me. But I had said to people a while ago, I was like, "Yo, if people could see me teaching, if people could see me talking with kids, right? Not just me, but just what this conversation sounds like, because people think that kids are not capable of that, or kids are not deep, or kids won't understand these kind of things." And I found that that's just not true, right? Like you can have some really, really deep, engaging conversations with kids. I found like that TikTok like launching me to anything was never the plan. I never thought that would have happened. Like never, ever in my entire life. So when I think about my future, like the show may or may not happen. And that's something that's tough to like acknowledge, that it may not get bought by a studio. It may not get bought by a network. I have a total faith that I'm going to do it, whether it's with this one or the next one. I know it. But I think about like, what's the end game? So what are like my outcomes for this work in general? And my outcomes like kind of are the anchor for me versus like my ideas. Am I going to do the books? Am I going to do speaking? Am I going to do a TV show? Because that will work itself out, right? And it's worked itself out in a lot of beautiful ways. But I have to stay true to this vision of I want kids to be I want kids to be excited about taking care of themselves. I want a youth movement. I want kids to be in space talking about self-care. I want kids to be talking about mental health. I want kids to be talking about growth and how to take care of themselves and stuff like that. I want to be, I have a very clear vision of I want there to be kids in the world that when they're struggling in their room alone, right? Because they don't know how to talk to their parents, they don't know how to talk to their friends, that they know that they can come and watch videos or they can watch some stuff. They know that this is a resource for them. So I just want to get to the position where I can be a resource to kids, to be a teacher that they choose. That's my dream. Yeah,
Oh,
we don't
that's powerful.
we don't even talk about that. These kids don't even get to pick. They have no say or autonomy in their education until they get to college, and still, you don't get to pick your teachers, right? And I want to
Unless
be.
you go on like ratemyprofessor.com
Yeah,
and try to choose it.
hey, right. But one of the things I did, I've never said in one of these things because I don't want to hear from. I sometimes have teachers message me about my work, right? And people have said things about like it not being realistic or like it's not as important or it's soft earlier. But I just like I don't know. I'm trying to let go of what I want it to look like, but I'm trying deeply to anchor myself in what I want it to feel like and what I want it to be like. Because I just think this is like really big, right? So sometimes I like get ahead of myself, but I think that when we start taking better care of ourselves, and when we start to be more compassionate and kind to ourselves and forgiving and understanding and accepting of ourselves, then we will be better with other people. I did bad things when I was younger, right? Like I can't pretend like I was 13, like integrity, right? No idea, right? I hurt people, uh, I stole, I bad things, and I didn't think about the other people because I was always being so mean and hard on myself, right? So it didn't matter. Like I'm kind of being nice compared to how I'm treating myself. But the more that I started to take care of myself, the more that I wanted to nurture and nourish the people around me, the more the bigger capacity I had to think about people outside of myself. And so in a way, it sounds like selfish to ask kids to think about themselves, but in reality, like I think that's what we need kids to have their first chance to build a positive relationship with themselves, because that's the most telling relationship. That relationship is going to indicate how they show up in the world. It's indicate what kind of relationships they're in. It's going to indicate what kind of work they're in. Their relationship with themselves is hyper. It's huge. It's so important. Um,
I mean, you meant, and you hit on it exactly like we were talking last time, that like you tell them that your relationship with yourself is the one that's not going to leave you. Like everybody else you can't control. That's the one that you have. And that's what you say to them. And that's super important because the thing is, oh God, like, because I think that so many, whether you come from a situation where the background isn't safe, if these kids come from certain backgrounds where it's the home place isn't safe, or if places where there are kids who, if it's different cultural backgrounds, or if they just come from a space where things are taken care of, but maybe there's no communication in the family. They can't even communicate because it's a very controlled environment. Like even if basic needs are met, you know what I mean? Like we just don't know. And I loved what you mentioned last time when you were like, really it's about making themselves realize that I'm in control. Like my breath is all I have. We talked about this last time. All we've got is our relationship with ourselves, and the fact that I can't control other people and their response, but I can work with my response and my reaction, and all I have is my breath.
yeah.
So most of us don't even know how to breathe. So if we even know how to breathe, we can take a second and be like, okay, I have me.
Yeah.
But what does that mean to say, okay, I like my relationship with me, like that's strong, that's valid, that's there. I have that. I own that. Like that's separate from all these other things, all these other relationships I may have, all these other thoughts that influence me at such a young age, because that's a part of the conditioning, and it's so empowering. Like you said, we think that, oh, kids can't know this. They know so much and they're so smart. And if they can take these tools and grow with them, it just only makes them stronger. And I just didn't forget this one thing that you mentioned last time when you said a teacher, when you were with certain kids, and then one of the teachers says, oh, just teach them to be grateful. And it's like, they don't have basic needs met.
Yeah.
They're not in a safe space at home.
Yeah.
What do you mean be grateful? Like, let's take this back for a second. You know what I mean? Like, let's teach them to understand what it means to even be, okay, they can trust, they can be in a safe space in this space.
Yeah.
How are you try living 1 hour, even 1 hour of one night in that kind of space, and then tell me about if being grateful is going to come to mind.
Well,
You know what
I mean, that community was so eye-opening to me, and it was really rough. I mean, I felt like, honestly, I had a little bit of PTSD when I left. Like, I would cry on the way to work, I would cry on the way home. It was just really unsafe for the kids. It was unsafe for the adults. There were really toxic adult relationships. There were really toxic, I mean, it was really, really bad. And they hired me as the positive school climate coordinator. And I went and did like a 2-week assessment of it, including talking to teachers, talking to kids, seeing how things were running, what discipline happened and stuff. And they were like, well, we want to see changes in the next 6 months. We would love for you to do like a gratitude program or something like that. And I was like, yo, we are like years away from that. We're years away from that. You can maybe have a teacher who has positive relationships with students, introduce that in their practice, but for that to be a community thing, like we have to address the issues. And when I first got there, I was like, yo, these kids are out of control. Like I've never seen kids be disrespectful like this. I've never seen kids like talk to teachers like this. And I was like kind of walking around with my chest puffed out for a while because I was like, whoa, they need some authority. This is going kind of weird, which I'd never felt before. And then I realized really quickly that it was not their fault, that it was completely on the adults in that space. And when I got there, they had just got a new principal who has made amazing changes with that school. Like he asked me to stay and I just couldn't because of my own trauma with it. But he has done the work. He brought in teachers who would build relationships, who were from the community, who knew what they were doing, established safety. The level of like aggressive behaviors has completely dropped, right? Because he understood that the basic needs are first. If being in school feels like being in the streets, then they're going to show up like they show up in the streets. And when they show up in the streets, they're trying to take care of themselves. They're trying to protect themselves. I've never been at a school before where kids are like, I had to come in yesterday even though my brother got shot. Right? I had to come in today even though my brother got shot because there's no one else to watch me. I can't be at home. Right? And then they're getting in trouble and they're like, they're going through trauma, right? Some of these kids have to worry about, where does my food come from? Some of these kids have parents who worked 3 jobs, right? They're saying the parents aren't involved, and like these parents are working multiple jobs. They don't have the resources to be involved, right? This community is oppressed. And I thought for a while, because the schools I started teaching this stuff in were in predominantly well off areas. And so the work was great because those kids had their basic needs met. They had their
Exactly.
needs met. It doesn't mean that they didn't have bullying. It doesn't mean that they didn't have their own strife and their own struggle.
Correct.
You know,
Correct. Right.
but we
Right.
were able to talk about these bigger things than like having to worry about discipline and stuff like that. And that school, what was hard about that school, something that kind of breaks my heart. I have a couple of moments of working with kids that break my heart. I thought that they hated me because I had to take over the after school program, because they pushed out, someone got pushed out. I took it over, and I had to set really firm boundaries. And I never had that as a kid, and then I had to do it. And it was like things like I canceled a field trip on the spot because they were cussing my teachers out. And I was like, no, we're not going to go into public like this. Like, you had your chance, you ruined it. We'll try next week, right? Next week, it was a different story, right?
Mm.
So I had to be like mean, and I had to be tough. And there was like a younger staff who like hated me because they treated it like it was the streets as well and stuff like that. And then at the very end, like there had been the number of like issues that we had in the after school program had completely changed. It had completely dropped. Being kicked out of the program had completely like reversed in terms of kids just being able to stay in the same amount of staying. We had started like multiple clubs for the kids that they had never had an opportunity to do. It felt like a community. And then I started to look at them and see them as kids again because they were safe.
Wow.
They were safe. Their behavior was suddenly not about like I have to take care of myself. I have to show up this way, right, to feel safe, which I don't question, right, to just like being knucklehead kid stuff, which I love to deal with. But when I left that job, and these cheerleaders, who, oh man, the cheerleaders, they hated me. They so vocal
I
about,
came from dance team, so I had a little thing against cheer people.
oh,
That's my personal.
they, like, and then they found out that I wasn't coming to their graduation because I had left. I was leaving before then, and then they told me, they were like, "You're not going to be there," and I was like, "No." I was like, "But y'all don't care. Like, why does it matter to you?" And she was like, "Of course we care." And then they were like, "Yeah, of course we care." And I said, "Well, I thought y'all didn't like me." And she's like, "Doesn't that, like, don't you know that that means we do like you if we treat you like that?" And I was
Oh
like,
my god.
"No, I
Oh
didn't
my.
that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that." But I think I told you this story about the kid I saw on the BART train, right?
Yes.
Can I
Yes.
again?
Please. Please.
Because that story, like, is so important to me. Um, okay, I'm good.
No,
So
no. We're all about vulnerability
I,
here. People need
all
that. It's
right.
all good.
Like it's hard. Um, there was a couple of kids who I had to remove from the after school program, and the deal was they were being violent, and it was like, hey, this you can't do this here, right? You can't do this here. Like, I don't care what he said. I don't care about what your reputation is. You cannot harm one another in this space, right? And so I gave like I think there. Okay,
I am so sorry. My
so
thing just went berserk. We are good now. We are good.
okay, I,
Thank you.
I told them, I was like, you have two options. You can leave, right, and not come back, or we can sit down and create basically like an agreement, right, of what it's going to look like for you to be in the space. Out of the five boys, three of them stayed, and they were like the ones who were getting into trouble outside of school, but also in there, and they were just hilarious. They were really funny, but I always had to like, run behind them and correct and remind them not to treat stuff like crap and not to talk to people like that and stuff like that. And I just assumed that they all hated me. And this one kid specifically, I just saw him go from fighting all the time to just kind of calm, like just kind of calm. He was like, he made jokes a lot, and then he was kind of calm. So when I left, I felt like I had like let that down. I felt like I had damaged those kids. I didn't recognize that what I had done was positive, right? Which was create a safe space. I didn't see it like that then, because I was used to being Mr. Donovan. I'm nice, I'm friendly, I play games, right? Like, that's my thing. And I had to go to suddenly like almost feeling like a dad, it felt like. And I saw him on a BART train 2 years later. He was in high school at this point. He was like a sophomore or a junior, and he had his younger sibling with him. And so I saw him and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, hey, man, do you remember me? And he was like, yeah, I remember you, Mr. Donovan. And I was like, okay, cool. And then he looked at his younger brother and he was like, that's who you need in your life. You need someone like Mr. Donovan because Mr. Donovan didn't let me get away with any of the stuff that you're doing, right? And he was like, you would be lucky if you had Mr. Donovan in your life. And then I like asked him a couple questions about high school. He was saying sir and stuff like that. And then they left. And I was thinking like, whoa, I had no idea. I had no idea that that kid, even 2 years later, viewed me that way, right? And so leaving that school, kids' safety became the biggest thing that I cared about.
Wow.
Create safety for kids because when there is safety, there's conditions to grow, right? When there is
Oh,
safety, you can grow, you can learn, you can really lean into who you are. You can lean into all these aspects of yourself. But I just think there isn't enough safety. And I'm happy we're really focusing on inclusive spaces. I think that that's really important. I really appreciate the work that is done around identity safety in classrooms. I think that's amazing. But I also want to talk about like safety from like safety and learning, just safety and learning in general. Um, if I had $1 for every time a middle schooler told me that they were just dumb or that they didn't matter, I wouldn't need to work right now.
and that may sound so small in passing, but it's not. It's
It's,
so real, it's so deep, and it's happening everywhere. Such a real thing. We may not realize it with our own situations or where our kids or nieces, nephews, siblings may go to school or, but it's such a real thing.
yeah.
And it's happening to so many.
If an adult said like I don't feel like I value, I don't feel like I matter, like I don't want to be here, you would take it seriously, right? So why do we not take it seriously when kids say that? And
Mm-hmm.
when kids talk about hurting themselves and stuff like that, a lot of times it's because they don't know how to articulate the disconnect that they're feeling. They don't really know, they don't want to hurt themselves. A lot of times they don't really want to kill themselves, but they know I don't feel good. I would rather not be than feel like this. And they don't have the language to articulate it. They don't have the language to articulate it. And you can give it to them. So the same kid I was teaching in the beginning, the girl who was like fighting for every extra credit assignment, who pushed herself so hard, right? Now she's talking about I make boundaries with myself and my schoolwork. So I'm taking care of my personal life. I'm making space for me. I'm spending time outside, right? I'm focusing on self-care because school is important to me, but it's not everything. And I'm listening to her talk about it. And I was like, look, you were talked about these things and now you've integrated them into your life, right? I had a boy tell me, like, we were cleaning my room. And this is a kid that just really struggled with opening up for a long time. I don't think he had a space to open up. And he said, I think I'm more emotionally available. And I looked at him and I was like,
One more time. Say that one more time.
I think I'm more emotionally available now.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, don't freak out, right? Because you don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to make a big deal.
And I was
Right,
like,
right,
oh
right.
yeah. I was like, tell me more. And he's like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm better at like saying how I feel and stuff and like being there for people. And he like went back to cleaning, and I'm like,
You're like, I'm trying not to burst right now. I'm trying not to like make this a big deal because I know, okay, wow, that's huge, yo.
and it's like why wouldn't they know? They think about this stuff all the time. They experience it. And I challenge for you: ask the adults in your life how they felt about themselves in middle school or how they felt about middle school. Ask, and you are going to get the same answers. Every once in a while, you're going to meet some very special soul that was like, I came alive in middle school, right? Like, because for the most of us, we remember how tough it is, and that is still happening. And on top of that, I just said this earlier too, on top of that, there's all these other things that we as adults did not have to deal with. So you have the regular just crap of being a kid that we've all experienced, right? And then you have all this pressure and all these things that we have no idea. I was listening to my client talk about like bullying online and stuff like that and how people do it. And I was like, yo, I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. Like, this is
Yeah,
wild. So I want kids to be able to build safety within themselves, right? And the point of this work is not to eliminate struggle. It's to give them the tools to grow through it.
exactly. It's not like there's no quick fix solution with anything. it's really, like you said, it's empowering. It's like, hey, I'm sharing with you things that actually you already know, that you just need
Mhm.
to learn more about. Like our subconscious knows, we just need to, they have to be
Yeah.
awakened.
Yep.
And we need to know how to deal with our different spaces and circumstances. And I
When
think that, oh, sorry, go ahead. You
no,
go.
no,
No, you go.
when I was teaching this curriculum to them, like one of the main practices I did was before we would introduce like the formal definition for a concept. So we'll talk about like, character strengths, right? There would be a blank slide that would be like, what do you think about this? Like, what do you know about this? And the kids, because I wanted them to know, I was like, you actually know this stuff, right? You feel it. That's your humanity, right? You feel it. And so to see kids be like, oh, that's, oh, that's compassion,
It's
right?
innate. It's
Yeah.
not something like it's innate in us. It's
They,
just been conditioned. Like there's so many reasons, but yes.
they
And
know it.
no, you go.
I just get
No,
so
you go.
passionate about this stuff. We've been talking for an hour, and I had a girl who I'm so proud of. This is a huge moment, but she struggled a lot in her other classes, and she didn't feel smart. That was like a big thing. She didn't feel smart, like very low self-esteem. And in my class, where the work is accessible, right? I tell them, I was like, you are the only person who gets to tell me what the right answer is. If you're reflecting on, and I would tell them too, I was like, if you're doing a reflection and you're lying, I won't know. Like, so why lie, right? You are the only person who's going to know if you're lying or not. So this is a chance for you to be an expert in you, right? To be curious about you and stuff. So in my class, we were talking about motivation. We were talking about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And she had an example. She was like, I have an example. She like shot her hand up, and I was like, all right, let's hear it. And so she like stood up and she said it, and like was so hyped because it was such a good example. And the class like cheered her on, like her friends were like clapping for her and stuff like that. And she was
Could
so,
you share the example if you don't mind?
I don't remember what it is.
Oh, okay,
Well,
okay.
because I'll tell you why I don't remember what it was, because the next thing is what stuck with me really hard. Because it was something about, oh, I do remember what it was. It was, so extrinsic motivation is you do something because you either want a reward or you don't want to get in trouble. And
Mhm.
so what she said was something that motivates her to do, like to clean her room, is to not get the chancla, which is like her mom's sandal. So that's like a big thing in their community where their moms like hit them in the head with their sandal and
Yep.
stuff like that. And so she was like, so I'm doing this because I don't want that consequence with my mom hitting me with my chancla. And she's like joking around and stuff. But I was like, yeah, that's perfect, right? Like I'm going to clean my room right now because I don't want to get in trouble. That's a perfect example, right? And so she yelled like, period, because she used to always do that. And then she sat back down. They're all like working and stuff. And I looked over at her and she was crying. And so I went over to her and I was like, hey, like, let's step outside. There's another teacher in the room. We go outside and I was like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah, I've just never feel smart in class. And she was just proud of herself. She was like, I never get to feel smart. And she felt smart in that moment. It was just massive. And so I followed her class too, to a math class where she hated math. And they put like a worksheet down in front of her and she turned her back to it. She literally just turned to it because she was like, I can't do this. So she started acting wild. She was throwing stuff, she was yelling, she was being obnoxious. And we talked about it. I was like, yo, this is scary to you, right? The math is hard, right? And you're acting out. You're acting out. She would rather be removed from class on her terms than have to face this math, which made her feel dumb, right? And she didn't want to feel that way. And we talked about this. Her and I talked about this. And so we stayed and I helped her. And we got help from another kid because I'm not good at math. That's a fixed mindset. It's a fixed mindset. I would tell them that. They're like, can you help me with my math? I was like, I can motivate you, but I cannot help with math. Um, and she ended up sticking with it. And I could see her like physically being like squirming, right? Not because she didn't want to do it, just because when she looked at it, it messed her up.
Visceral, yeah.
Yeah, like literally, right? And so she was getting it. And then she did a problem on the board, right? And everybody also like celebrated that. And I was like, you see what this is? But what was different for her that time was she was safe with me.
I was gonna, yes,
She was safe.
yes.
And I don't blame other teachers for not teaching this stuff. To me, it does not make sense to ask a math teacher to teach. It does not. You know what I mean? Like if everybody taught what I taught, our kids would be super confident and not know anything, right? You know, like they would have a lot of skills that they need and stuff like that. And so for me, that's why I was like, this class works perfectly as like a core subject because it helps them recognize how they show up. It helps them really base themselves in their humanity and their like this is who I am as a person. So when they go to math and they go to these other classes, even if it's tough, it's not such a threat. It's not such a threat to my identity.
100. And I don't think they're opposing things. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's like it's one way or the other. No, no, no. I think they're just different. We're talking of one about a method of communication and the way we talk to kids as a whole. And then there's the subjects. So it's about having that open communication and, you know, basically not shutting down,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Or not assuming or not judging and, you know, having this approach or different various ways of approaching students within these subjects. I don't think they're exclusive or they're it's different. We're not talking about comparing or choosing to routes or putting education down or putting subjects down. No, no, no. It's the method in which we communicate and how we're building these relationships and trust in situations where they probably don't have that or don't come
Yeah.
from that. That's what this is about. And the fact that you, one, were able to have her in a space where she felt comfortable to say that to you, to be vulnerable, to speak openly, identify what it was, be able to talk about it, and then be able to take it on in a space where she wasn't comfortable, or she would immediately probably deflect and say, I'm not doing this. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to help or whatever. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And
And I,
that's a process.
yeah. And that's what I told her. I was like, you're engaged in a really intellectual process right now, which is understanding yourself. It's intellectual and it's introspective, right? You are doing hard work. You're doing work that adults struggle with, right? She can access her feelings. She might be having the worst day ever, but she can tell you how those are. And I had to tell her, I was like, that's emotional intelligence, right? And your feelings are low, right? But that doesn't mean that you're not accessing them and you're not processing them. Like, and to me, that whole moment, I was like, this is growth. That was growth. What you just did was growth, right? Literally. This is what it is. If you want to think of a moment for growth, because we have this thing called a portfolio at the end where they talk about moments of growth and stuff. And I was like, you could do a whole thing on this, right? Because this was huge. This was huge. And to see her, I just remember her face. Just how proud she was. How proud she was of herself both times, right? Both times. Then she started writing stuff on the board for me. She was my helper. She always wanted to write stuff on the board. And she started to take ownership of the classroom and really feeling comfortable in that space. And I just see that so often with so many kids, you know?
But that's what's so beautiful. Even this board that you mentioned, right? This board of growth. What if our growth boards, like our grades, were in that way? Do you know what I mean? Like, how much did you grow? Not how much do you know by regurgitating, how much did you grow? And I think that that is what's so huge because it's like, it's different for each person. It's not the same for each person. They're all working with something different. And it's hard. And I think this often gets confused that it's always going to feel good.
No.
No, growth, it's hard stuff. It's not pretty.
No.
It's uncomfortable. It's difficult. And it's
Yeah.
different for each person. And I think that I'm going to put my little yoga input here just because I can talk so much about yoga because this is very much fun with yoga for me. But like people, like the Western yoga space isn't yoga. It's not a fitness class where you take safe candle spaces and breathe in and you're going to feel good and comfortable. No, that's a positive side effect that may happen. But like real change, real yoga, real looking introspection, real looking at yourself is ugly. It's hard, it's difficult, it's uncomfortable, it's not pretty and safe and flowy all the time and feeling good. And I think that feeling good often gets mixed with, oh, well, you know, that's what change and good grades and doing well. Doing well is going to feel good. Not
Yep.
necessarily. Like you were
No.
talking about, so much good is happening for you, but that was such a hard process and not pretty and not comfortable and so hard and sad and difficult. And
Yeah.
I think that's where pain, it's transformation is also involves pain. It's good too. It's also
Yeah.
painful. It's hard.
I mean, that's where I'm at right now. Like from the outside, well, you know, I don't really even think from the outside because I think one of the things that people message me about a lot is like transparency because I'm open, right? Like I'm pretty open about my struggles and stuff like that because this is a blessing. I'm living in blessings right now. I am surrounded by it. Like it has been the way people have been supporting me, the way that things have been stepping up, the opportunities I've had, the new connections I've made, like it is a blessing. And also it has been some of the difficult months I've had in a long time. And it has been hard. And I wanted to quit. And I wanted to quit on myself. And I wanted to give up. I was looking up jobs to be like an animal keeper. I was like, you know what? Nope, I'm not going to do this. And it was really, really tough. But that was the growth. And what's happening to me now, I'm seeing all these things in these areas of my life where I'm growing. And my capacity to do things is changing. And I can see it because I've been going through it. I've been going through it. It's like, it's hard. You got to tear those muscles. It's just like lifting.
Yeah.
I make where it's like, you got to tear these muscles. And I also push to my kids, super happy I realized this, is you got to rest too, right?
Yes.
If you're trying to grow all the time, right, you don't ever have moments to reflect and just be, right? And we push growth so much. I used to push it so much. And so Angela Rye asked me, like, what did you get better at doing this year? I was like, nothing. And she was like, no, it wasn't Angela Rye. I don't know who I was talking to about this, but they said nothing. I said nothing. And they're like, you've done so much. And I was like, no, I mean nothing as in like good, like resting, like not working. I got better at taking time to recover and reflect and just sit in where I'm at right now. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to rest, you know?
I think that's such an important point. I had this with a friend of mine who I spoke with last on a different IG Live, just Preet Kaur. She's an author, spoken word educator. And we talked about the power of stillness.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you saw Michaela Cole's speech when she won the Emmy. And I think her quote, kind of what her speech went viral because she was talking about sometimes it's okay to disappear in the silence from everything, everyone, I'm misquoting, I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what she was going after. And that's often we're in this Western modern-ish society. It often pushes this that if you're not doing something, you're going back. If you're not on, if you're not achieving something, if you're not actively doing something, that you're not. And it's like no. Wait a minute. Stillness is doing something. Breathing is doing something. It is happening no matter what. And there's power in stillness. And just because I'm not doing what may seem actively outward doesn't mean I'm not doing anything. Because so much happens actually within. And it's so important to be in spaces of silence and stillness because and there's another beautiful Native American quote I came across. Again, I'm paraphrasing. I do not remember. I remember the idea, not the exact words. Okay. So good that I'm not an actress.
We love the owner. Love the transparency.
Oh God, but what it was saying was that it was saying that in our backgrounds, apparently, like we come from places where we think that we got to achieve something, but really, what if nature just meant us to be like plants and animals, like not necessarily that we're here to achieve something, but just to be, and that itself is so powerful. Yeah. And that's what so many backgrounds, I think, spirituality speak of, is this power of stillness, this power of within. And it's not nothingness as an empty. It's allowing to be filled.
Yeah.
And that, I think that often gets misunderstood. Now, that's not the same as laziness or not doing it. I think that's the thing. If you're acting like, I just don't want to do anything, like there's a difference in like, I'm actively choosing to just not, I'm choosing this versus I'm just responding maybe from a traumatic thing or just because I don't want to or because I'm not doing the thing that I really want. I think those shouldn't be confused.
Yeah.
The
reason that I talk about body like lifting too is because like I want to lift every day. Like I'm really into it. I think it's because it's the most disciplined. All right, sorry. It's the most like consistent I am. Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
Yeah. Yes. It's the most consistent thing that like you have to rest, and it's perfect because on those rest days, right? If you work out 7 days a week, you're going to burn your body to the ground, right? You can't do that. Your muscles can't grow. They need time to recover, and that's what's happening. This process of recovery, when I'm laying in bed, that's what's happening, and that's what's happening too. Like I was so hard on myself when I got back. I was like, I'm so depressed. You know, why do I want to quit? Why can't I talk to anyone? I don't want to be around when I have all these friends here and I have to try to explain to them how difficult it is to be around people. And I was like, something is wrong with me. Something is broken. Something is not working. And then I think back to May when I was on the Today Show, right? Which was huge, where I cried on national TV, where I talked about killing myself on national, where I bled I bled for the sake of the work, for the sake of the story, right? All these strangers suddenly knew some of my most intimate traumatic moments.
Right.
Right? And then I was on Now This, and then I was doing all these podcasts, and then suddenly I was running a coaching business, and then blah, blah, blah. And what I realized is I had no time to recover from that huge moment in my life. I should have came home and relaxed. I should have came home and took some time for myself before trying to push forward. But that thing in my head, capitalism, right, that tells us we have to move forward, right, was pushing me and saying, no, this is your opportunity. You have to do this. You have to do this, right? You have to. And I kept pushing myself, and all I wanted to do was sleep. And all I wanted to do was be away from people and not talk and go walk in the forest and stuff like that. And I started doing that stuff recently and making time for it because I realized I needed to do it. And if I'm going to be doing these big things where I'm opening up myself and my life and my work to the world, I need to have time for myself. And so suddenly I looked at it and realized, like, this was good. It was hard, but it was a good thing. It was my body telling me, my spirit telling me, you need space, man. You need quiet. I have never lived by myself. I love my family. I'm so grateful to be here with them. But also, I don't have anywhere I can go where it's just me. And I've never wanted that before. And not only that, not a bad thing, that's a testament to the relationship I've built with myself. So,
Ooh.
you know what I mean, right? Like,
Taking
that's
it back to the relationship with the self. Exactly.
before when I had this other relationship with myself where I pushed myself to be something. I have to be this role. I have to take care of people. I have to be friends. I have to be the teacher that helps everyone, right? Like, I didn't make any space for me as a person, right? As I didn't date. I didn't have like any hobbies. I didn't have any passions outside of this work. Everything was this work. And
Mm.
and I seemed positive, but I was being unkind to myself. I was being mean to myself in this kind of backward way, right? Of like not allowing myself to rest and not allowing myself to have a life and stuff like that. And so now, like, I want those things. I think about partners. Also, I think about family. I think about stability, right? I cried when I saw my friend's house because they had a house. They're like, yeah, I bought it. And I was like, this is yours. Like, wow, it's amazing. I'd love to have my own space. And people will say those things don't matter. But for me, I've never allowed myself to even think about those things.
Right, right,
Now,
right.
you
Mm-hmm.
don't do this. You deserve these things. You deserve to think about these things. You deserve to have them in your life and also to do the work. I'm not going to quit the work, right? But it felt like I was
That,
in a lot of ways, you know?
and that's the super important part. And I think that also going exactly along with what you said is we don't take the time to reflect. Because sometimes it's like, wait, where? Because like you said, right? Sometimes the things take away. It's like, well, when as your vision gets bigger and as things come into place, am I sticking to the thing that matters? Am I sticking to my intention? It's hard. It's hard. And so to take a moment to reflect and like digest and take that and then go forward, that's so, so important. And we often don't do that. And we don't often question ourselves too. Like, how was that? Was that okay? What was going on there? You know what I mean? Because it's so easy to look outward rather than in.
And
Yeah.
when we question ourselves too, we end up a lot of times being really mean to ourselves. It's not like passionate inquiry, you know what I mean? It's like negative talk a lot of times, right? Which is like, what could you have done better? Like, why are you acting like that, right? It's like judgmental. And what I've learned is I was mean to myself for a long time, and I did not get a lot of stuff done. I did some stuff, right? But it didn't help me motivate. It didn't help me create. It didn't help me feel inspired or free. It just made me feel like crap all the time. Like, no matter what I was doing, I was like, you're not doing enough, right? Like, you're not. I'm feeling that about my TikTok right now, right? I just have these feelings of you're not doing enough. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And now I'm just trying to practice being like, hey, man, like, why are you feeling this way? What's going on?
Yeah, going to the root of it rather than the reaction or the response. Exactly.
What's going on?
And
I'm
I
like,
think,
sorry, go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead. I sorry.
Well,
It was a glitch, so I thought, no, go ahead.
Well, I've had a lot of issues in the first couple of months, and it's hard to kind of own this because it makes me feel like my integrity is kind of shot. But I had this big realization. I kept having to cancel meetings. But like for June and July and August, I was having like 7 or 8 meetings a day, and sometimes it was like an engagement opportunity. Sometimes it was coaching. Sometimes it was like me and you kind of thing, and it was just so many conversations. I just like lost where I was going because I saw my mom. Hey, mom.
Hi.
Um, I just I asked myself, like, instead of being mean to myself, instead of like, you're messing up your opportunity, why are you screwing this up? Why are you being lazy? I asked myself, why does this feel so hard right now? Like, why am I so drawn right now? And not, the first answer is not depression, right? I started to look at it, and I looked at my schedule, and I realized that I was working 7 days a week. I had no days off. Every single day, I had something happening. I had some conversation. And these conversations are not just like normal, like, I'm doing my duties for the days. These are connection making. These are holding space for people. These are me sharing work. Every conversation I have is different. It's not structured the same, right? Even coaching. Every coaching client is a completely different program, like that. And I had no time where it was just my day off, right? My day off. And then, of course, I'm going to be, of course, I'm going to want to cancel. Of course, I'm not going to want to hang out with people. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. So I made Mondays my first official days off. And then I just moved some stuff from Tuesday. So I'm going to do Mondays and Tuesdays off. And I'm not going to work on those days.
See, what's so amazing is what you said on what you did with yourself is exactly what you did with your kids. You say that you take away from blame of the self or accusing yourself or judging yourself as something and saying, well, wait a minute, where's this really coming from? Let me question myself in this way. It's the way you're questioning, not only identifying the how you're speaking to yourself, questioning, figuring out which ways to question yourself and really backtrack and not put it on something. Oh, well,
Yeah.
it's the effect of this or this. It's like, well, let me take a look at this very practically. And I
Mhm.
see it. And often, like you had mentioned last time, when you talk to kids and you ask them, hey, would you talk to somebody else you love that way? Then why would you talk to yourself that way? And so many of us do it. We don't even realize that that's subconsciously what we're doing. And
Mhm.
immediately it's a judgment blame game, whether it's because of the way we were taught by society or parent talk or something we heard from somebody else, right? All that. But really it's taking it down to that simple level of how we're doing it with our own selves. And
Yeah.
often we spoke briefly about the background that I came from last time, Jainism, which is very, very deeply rooted in ahimsa, nonviolence across the board. But it even goes to detail of nonviolence of the self in the sense that we often don't look at how we are harming ourselves. So nonviolence, oh, did this something happen to the volume? Is it all okay? Oh, audio cut.
Okay, I
Is
know
it
what
good
it
now?
was. Yeah, my mom started her car. My Bluetooth connected to it.
Oh, it went in and out.
That's all of
All good. Hi, mom's
it.
car. And hi, mom.
What
Say
were
that
you
again.
saying, though? I lost you when
Oh
that
yeah, no,
happened.
no, no. I was saying that the background that I come from, it's really beautiful in the sense of this thing that things certain parts of it I really resonate with, and one that really stuck with me was ahimsa, like nonviolence across the board, which we're raised in as a way of life, physically, mentally, emotionally, all that. But in terms of the mental aspect, how you're harming yourself is really
Mhm.
talked about. Like, because we always talk about, okay, don't kill others, don't kill other animals, plants, beings, like across the board. But it's like how the violence towards the self is just as bad, and what that looks like. What does himsa violence look like? And it's stuff like this, things we wouldn't think about.
Yeah.
How we're talking, how we're judging, what we're putting on ourselves is himsa, is violence,
Yeah.
and it's really actually talked about, and it's beautiful to know that that's actually something that it's not often there, but that once we can recognize it, it's that's given that much importance, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
getting at, that it's given just as much importance as doing harm to anybody else, and that's often overlooked, I think.
I think, like, when we become aware of the harm we do to ourselves, it's easier to become aware of the harm we do to other people as well. And I think about the people who are really negative, um, which is valid in a lot of ways, right? It's a way to be if that's how you want to live. But I think about people who do harm to other people, and in so many of those situations, the harm um, comes from a place of someone trying to protect themselves. Is like we're always trying to protect ourselves, and that's so, like, we have people who are being really rude or pushy, or is like they've had to make their space in the world, and that's the way that they've done it, and it all comes from,
Mhm.
like, I think, a lack of inner safety and stuff. Even when men won't cry, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
with won't cry. I've literally watched men I love punch holes in walls. I've talked about this with Caleb and Kara. Punch a hole in the wall because he couldn't say how he felt, right? And I was like, you're physically harming yourself, right? So then you have these people who are harming other people because they've been in this practice of subconsciously harming themselves for so long, right? And it just, that's why I think this work is so important. I think as we move further in our, people swear that humanity is promised, right? People swear that we're promised and we'll always, you know, make it through and we'll always figure it out and stuff like that. But I don't think that's true. I think that we have limited time and space on this world and planet, and we need to take care of each other in order to make it through. But right now, we have so many people who are coming from places of fear, right? People who are coming from places of fear of something being stripped away from them, or something, you know, them not having opportunities or resources. There's not enough, right? And we don't have enough people coming from a place of humanity. And so the show idea that I'm going to pitch is really touching up on that, where it's like we've seen so much fear. We've seen so much fear-based action recently, from the adults, right? Like kids watching the news for the past couple of years, like they're seeing the adults do these same things that we tell kids not to do. And it's coming from this place of, I have to secure power for myself. I have to secure positions. I have to secure financial, you know, these billionaires who could end world hunger are still stuck on this, my money is my identity and my safety, right? You could live comfortably on a fraction of what you have, but you're still moving from that place of, I cultivated this. This is mine. And it's fear. It's fear based. It's fear
Oh,
based.
100.
And that's what
100.
that's what I see with middle schoolers. That's what I see with them, just like I see it with adults. They're not less than adults. I see them do the exact same thing adults do. But we, for some reason, say that adults are valid in it, right? So want money or security or power, you're valid. But kids not standing up for someone because they don't want to be targeted, right? Or kids being bullied, or kids bullying other people, or kids harming themselves, right? These kids are doing this because they're afraid, and they're trying to feel better, and no one is talking to them about feeling better, right? And no one is talking to them about the darkness. No one is talking to them about either of these things. And then they're going into the world with these identities that they've created that are trying to protect them, and oftentimes don't. Like, oftentimes don't. I had a boy, too, one time who asked me about, he said that crying was like, he was told in his family that crying is weakness. Like, from his family specifically, his dad told him that if he cries, he's weak. And so I just asked him straight up, I was like, do you think I'm weak? He was like, no. And I was like, well, do you think I'm strong? And he was like, yeah, I think you're really strong. And I was like, don't I cry? And he was like, yeah, all the time. And I was like, yeah, right? And I was like, so what's different? Like, what's different? Where is there a disconnect here? Right? And so I had to ask him, I was like, you have to define your own, you have to define strength for yourself. What does strength look like to you? You know what I mean? Like, because you get to decide that. And so I just feel like we need kids to start taking better care of themselves now, because unfortunately, they are the people who are inheriting all of the mess that has been created through this disconnect of humanity, and they are the ones who are going to have to solve really huge problems when their when the food supply is not abundant, when
Yep.
space is not abundant,
Yep.
right? And they're going to have to step up. And I also want these kids to have positive relationships, so they're not martyring themselves, so they're not burning themselves to the ground, so they're not this high school senior who has ulcers and their stomach, because they're so concerned about these causes that they're fighting for. They don't have time for friends or sports or passions or anything, because they're so hyper focused on fixing these problems. So I think that if we can teach kids, this is like my wrap up statement, right? If we can teach kids to take care of themselves, then they will learn how to take care of others. And they will learn how to take care of the world, right? But it has to start with, I think, deeply believe, right? It has to start with them taking care of themselves. Seeing kids be compassionate with themselves, you know what I mean? To see a kid practice compassion, right? It's just as powerful when they're doing it with themselves, when they're doing it with other people. And then every time I would see kids have moments where they showed compassion, I would see them show compassion to other kids later. It's how, I
It's
think it's just how it works. I don't know. That's what I think, at least.
no, absolutely. I absolutely. I mean, I did want to just bring one more point in because that was so beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, is that like I'm so, I mean, you're so 100% right. Like I just it's just it's almost heartbreaking. You know what I mean? And then when we look at ourselves and we're like, well, how do we make changes on a bigger in a bigger scale? And I know that you were interested in taking this globally. as well,
Yeah.
potentially. And one point I did want to bring up, it breaks my heart because I told you last time that we spoke that one of the biggest numbers, if not the biggest number of student suicides is in India and the South Asian community. And there are so many pressures that exist there because it's a rat race. It's like you won't survive. There's so many people. There's limited amount of things, and it's a space where it's like do or die kind of thing, and everybody's competing for that space. And there's many different reasons for the pressure, and it was a different generation time for the
Yeah.
parents, grandparents, and that way of life than it is now. But for a lot of people, and the class and caste situation is so different. Like the how people live in the upper classes versus the lower class, it's a complete difference. And so we can't take a situation and be like, well, you can't treat your kids that way. Well, it's like, you don't know what that life is.
Yeah.
Again, that same conversation we were having earlier. You can't say that, you know what I mean? Like, you can't compare, well, we need to apply this type of, like, it's like, no. Understand the history. Now, again, these are cultures that were once all talking about this experiential self and so on and so forth. And learning from that place that through colonization, through a lot of things in history, through a lot of political, social lenses and filters, have turned to this space of like a rat race. And so it's unfortunate because I understand where the parents come from. I understand that they're trying to look for the best for their kid, but at the same time, that's not doing the best service. And so what's really hard is like, so I guess my question to you is like, where are your maybe ideas at in terms of, you know, bringing these concepts and this method with cultures that may not receive it all in that way? Because maybe some of the upper classes, they have that, they're used to that
Yeah.
conversation, it's very modern, they understand that. But for places where it's not accessible, like, well, I don't know how this is going to have my the only way for my kid to do well is by succeeding, by getting these grades, by going through this system. So this
Yeah.
talk is lovely, but we can't afford that, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so for the kids, it's interesting because kids in these spaces, they're like, they understand because they have technology. They see, they almost live two lives. So it's
Yeah.
like they have their space where they're like, you know, this is me in my comfortable space, but this is not what I'm allowed to do. This is who I am at home. And it's like, so many of them don't even know how to be talked to. They're being raised in this way. Boys and girls are raised different. I mean, that whole situation also, there's another level of all of these things. It goes on and on. But I guess it's like culturally, how do you see, okay, well, I understand that I'm not going to have the exact same lingo, that same language probably with this, but yes, my work, what I'm going to do is resonate, because there's amazing work and amazing shows in India that have done a similar thing.
Yeah.
But how can we really get to those classrooms and the spaces where it's needed most, but communicate hopefully in a way that actually, you know, is making some change for the adults to also have that space, and also for the kids. So do you see like maybe having different people on board, you know, in this space from those backgrounds who can communicate in that way, or you know, and somehow express that this is going to be a benefit, you know, that's not
Yeah.
something that's going to harm or hurt the
Yeah.
future of their child? And that's a very big way of me saying it, but I wanted to give that background a little bit into
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think, first of all, I want to hear from kids from those backgrounds. I think we need to hear from kids. I think there's a lot of conversations that happen about kids that kids are not involved in. And I think that that's really frustrating. One of the most powerful things that we can do for kids is listen to them, because they will tell you how it is, right? They will tell you how it is. And this idea that this is how the world is, like, that's not true. You know what I mean? We can change these things. Like, that's what people said about slavery when it was happening. I don't like it, but this is just how it is. You can't do anything about it, right? That's not true. What I'm trying to figure out is, first of all, I want to be open and I want to learn. I want to grow, because even going from Virginia to these, you know, these well-off schools to Willie Brown, where the kids were, I said the name, where the kids were black and I'm black, doesn't mean that I had the same experience as them. My experience growing up was so different. And so I had to listen and learn a lot. And that's what I want to be able to do. I think that a powerful thing that we can show kids is I don't have all the answers all the time. And I'm open to learning, and I want to hear. So not only do I want to hear from those kids, I want to hear from those educators. I want to hear from those parents. I want to hear their concerns, because these are valid concerns, right? But I also, when we try to challenge these beliefs and try to tell people this is what you should believe, this is what you should believe, that's manipulation, and that rarely works, right? But what we can do is influence them, right? Having open up dialogue and conversations. And my hope is that eventually the message of this work will be more around kids can show up and do amazing things, right? And be successful and have thriving careers and personal and all these other things if they're taking care of themselves. These things don't have to be separate. I'm not saying tell kids to not pursue grades and not go to college. I'm not doing any of that. What I'm saying is tell them how to treat themselves so they can be kind to themselves, because kindness, self-compassion, right, self-love, that propels us so far. Who propel us so far, you know? And so someone said, how about those kids who went to systems?
Yeah. I'm like trying to listen to your like, comments at the
Yeah,
same time.
that's what I'm saying is like, so when I have these conversations, I want to bring lots of people in on these conversations to talk about them and stuff like that. Because that school was like, yo, you're black. It's important that they see you there. And I was like, yeah, I agree. But also, I'm not from here. I don't know what this experience is like. I never had to worry about these things growing up. And so that was a big shift for me to suddenly be like, maybe it's not the right time to teach them gratitude. You know, maybe it's not the right time to be pushing this positive shit. Excuse my language. Because they need something different, right? And so it's in service of the kids. And it doesn't mean that the work is always going to look the same, right? And what I would eventually love to do, what I would love to do is to create a network of like public teachers, right? Whether it's
Mm.
social media content, like who are all teaching all sorts of different things, right? Because kids in India, kids in Japan, kids in Germany, you know what I mean? Kids in like in America, like they're all going to need different things. They're going to need different things. But if we're committed to asking them what they need and creating spaces where we can help them discover that and help them take care of themselves in what is the struggle of life, right? Then we'll see societal changes, because kids are going to want to change those things. Kids are going to want to change those things. And when kids know their values and their strengths and they're moving from those places, they're going to show up differently in the world. They're going to show up differently in the work. And it's worked. Like it has for so long, but it hasn't worked. It hasn't
I
worked. When we have kids killing themselves, when you have babies, 12-year-olds killing themselves, then it's not working. Then it's not working. It's not working. To have that be the number 2 cause of death for 10 to 24-year-olds, and to claim that we are the greatest nation in the world, and have that statistic is sick. It's sick, because to me, on a fundamental level, we are not taking care of our people. We're not. We're not. And I want to live in a world where kids can, um, ask for what they need, and kids can be respected and seen and lifted up, and that kids can get the help that they deserve, and that the struggle that we all go through, that is necessary, that is life, is how we grow, that their suffering turns more into struggle that they can get through, that they can grow through. Because right now, so much of their struggle is turning into suffering. And kids don't deserve to suffer. No one deserves to suffer, but especially them. And I think when you think about the greatness of a society, someone said this, I don't know who, my friend brought this up at one of our staff meetings, and it's stuck with me ever since. Someone said, like, you ask, like when you're asking about the well-being of a country, like, ask about the well-being of the kids.
Yep.
Ask about the
Yep.
well-being, and
I've
that will
heard
tell.
I've heard a very similar one. Ask how you treat your animals in that
Mm.
country. And I think those go in tandem actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um yeah. Yes. And you brought it back to the kids. Listening
Because
to the kids. I want to listen to the kids. That's what it is.
they are the building blocks of society. They are the building blocks, and we are building hollow blocks. We are building hollow blocks. Like, we are sending unequipped kids into, I always say this, but it's huge. I think we're sending unequipped kids into the battle for our survival, right? And they don't even know how to take care of themselves, but they got good grades.
Like they don't even get to be kids, one. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think I know that you also do coaching and speaking. I really think you would, if you're not doing it already, would be amazing at doing adult workshops all over.
Well, I
Or
just did.
something for adults.
Look, I just did a self-talk workshop for Whole Foods.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Whole Foods hired me to do a gratitude workshop, and then I told them I teach 3 skills, and they hired me to come back and do a self-talk workshop. And I've had conversations with people, like I'm still talking to people from that workshop because they were like, especially a lot of men, were like, "Yo, I needed this. This is so important. Like this was a huge thing for me." And it's the work I do with kids is human work, human work. Most of the stuff I found was from personal development stuff for adults. I was
It's
like,
essentially,
there's
no,
skills here,
but
kids, you know?
it's essentially what it means to be human and how to
Yes,
communicate that with their kids. And I think, oh my God, if you could even do this internationally, I'll be your translator.
come on.
I
Come
will.
on.
I
Well, you know,
will.
about this. Think about this. What would it look like if we can create a space where adults and kids can do this work together?
Together. See, you took it out of me in the next question. Exactly. Because that's the
Right?
next step. First of all, we want them to understand them. We want to understand ourselves. It's us. It's not just them. It's like we want to make sure that we understand this for ourselves.
Yep.
And then now we can take it further because it's about that relationship. Because it's not just limited to that. Because it
Yeah.
could stop for some people at that. Like, okay, I understand it for me, but maybe not how to do it beyond that.
Yeah.
And I
And
think that at any
yeah.
age, I feel I would want to do this now. You know what I mean? With my own parents.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know what I mean?
some of the reasons, one of the reasons, the relationship building I have with kids it's a two-way street. It's not like I'm the master of relationship building. They're choosing to show up. They're choosing to say, I accept this, I don't accept this. I'll let you be here, I won't let you be here, right? And so for me too, one of the things I think that really connected me to the kids was, and there's always kind of a safe boundary line for me around this, but expressing my emotions and allowing them to be compassionate with me. And so for some of these kids, like the things that they would do, when I had depression one year, I have episodes of it, despite what I'm doing with my work, depression has followed me my whole life. And it got so bad that I couldn't make eye contact with the kids. I had a co-teacher and I was there for like 2 periods that day. And I started crying after class and told her, I was like, I can't be here because they could see that I was hurting like really bad. I had to take like a week off after that. And the kids like wrote a huge, just like, here's what you do for us, like poster board, and all signed it and wrote me notes and stuff like that. And just let me know, like, we care for you, we're here for you, we are so grateful for you, like you are loved and you are safe in this space. And they were telling me like what I was telling them. And so I didn't tell them all of the things in my life that were making me sad and stuff like that, but I expressed like, I'm struggling right now and this is tough for me, and it's hard for me to show up in a fun and silly way today because I'm in a rough space, and can you all hold that space for me so we can get this work done without those extra expectations, right? And they're open and they're like, yes. And on those days too, the way that how attentive they were and responsive and respectful, because I would do that for them, right? And so then they can do it back for me. And it was a co-regulated learning space, right? Anytime they taught me anything, I would celebrate it. It's like, yo, we can teach each other. And
Yeah.
if we can model for kids what it looks like to engage in introspection and self-care and compassion and growth, and how tough this is, and these insecurities and fears that we have, if we can show kids that we all have those, then kids can own that part of their own journey and not be ashamed of that. That's a part of the human struggle. Yeah.
100. No, like I also want to thank official This Is Me, Staccato 9, and a few others like who've just been
Yep.
I like wanted to engage and also like respond, and it's thank you for your comments and what you're saying as well, and yes, everything you said, I have no comment. I have nothing to I just agree with everything that you've said and who you are, and it comes through, and that's why I was like, however long this takes,
Two
I
hours.
just what'd you say?
It's been 2 hours.
Oh, I know. We started a little late, so it's like a little less than 2 hours. But no, but yes, almost. Say
Well,
it again.
people in the chat too, like, I'm really grateful that you've been here with us the whole time, and
Yes.
yeah, I'm super super grateful. I know that social media is really impersonal. I also know that with where I want to go, I'm not going to have the capacity to talk to every person that reaches out. That's something that I really struggled with. I was like answering Instagram messages for 2 to 3 hours a day, right? Like not getting paid, talking to people are sending me messages being like, this is my life story. And I'm like, yo, people are sending me like really personal things that I want to.
Right. Right.
But right now I'm still in a space where I can make space for that. And so the people who are in here commenting and stuff, I really appreciate you. And if you ever want to reach out or just like connect, like send me a message. I'll send you a voice message back because that's my thing. It helps me type faster if I just say it in a message instead. But no, I feel really grateful. I felt like, I don't know, I felt like an alien for a long time with this stuff. I was like, as I was just seeing all this stuff happen, and I was like, I can't be the only person that thinks this. And I knew I wasn't, right? And so one of the biggest blessings I've had recently is just being able to connect with people who are like, yes, this work, lift it up. I need this work. These kids need this work. We support this. And it's a movement. It's powerful. And I think if we're going to heal our society, not just for the sake of we deserve healing, which we do and we need it, right, after everything we've been through, we also need to heal so we can be stronger for what's ahead, because I'm worried. I'm worried about where we're going, you know? And so that's why I put focus on kids. That's why I put focus on kids to take care of themselves. I'm not asking them to go out and solve these problems yet. I'm not. I'm saying you take care of your inner landscape first, right? So when you get out there in the real world and you have to face the stuff that is up against you, that you can do it, and you can do it in a way that takes care of you and takes care of other people and stays true to your passions and your values and your strengths, and have a life that you deserve. And so it's tough. I've gotten pretty emotional about this. I get like random parties and stuff. I'm like talking to people about it, and they're like, "Wow, it's so cool." And I'm like, the kids, right? Because they're our last chance. And they can be our saving grace. You know what I mean? They can be everything, but it's not about them doing this for us. It's about them doing it for themselves.
Yes.
That's what it
Yes.
is. I'm not saying they have to get better so they can fix us. I'm saying it's better so they can do it. So they can do what's right. Yeah, fix yourselves, kids. We're a mess. Sometimes I watch TV and I think that. Seriously, I hear adults arguing and I'm like, man, I've heard middle schoolers have better dialogue than these people. You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? You know what's interesting is like you mentioned party real quick. I was like, you know, it's funny, like at parties, be like, oh, I don't want to talk about that, or that's too serious, or that's too full of depth. I'm like, yo, this is the stuff we should be talking about. You know what I mean? There's no part-time break from, oh, this is too heavy. Like, I get it. Sometimes there's overwhelming things happening, but it's like, no, this is the stuff we want to be like the real shit, excuse my language too, is where the stuff is at. You know? I don't know. That's how I feel about that. But I think the glitchiness is sending me it feels like a message. But I seriously, I don't know if there's anything you want to say, because I'm gonna echo Staccato '09 over here, that we appreciate you truly, and we love you, and you deserve love. We all do, and you, with what you're doing, it's amazing. And like you said, it's your work, it's you also, what you bring to that work. And I wanted to ask if there was anything that you wanted to add, because I don't think this should be the only one we do, personally. I think we
No,
could take topic by topic and go in depth when it works out for you, and when it works out as a song.
I think I want to like offer an invitation to the people who are listening to this too, and really start to, if the work resonates with you, then you're a part of it, right? And even if you're not practicing it or teaching it yet, or even if you're just doing it for yourself, or you're thinking and putting energy into, yes, kids deserve more, and you're a part of the work, just as much as I am, right? I play a really unique role, and I'm very lucky to have figured that out, and I know how to take advantage of it. I'm going to do it, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be fantastic. But the people who are lifting the work up, like, they are the people who are a part of the work. We're all like, we're all in our own little shit. You're in the flow with us, and so I'm just really grateful to be able to meet people like this, and I love you all, and I reflect it right to you. Yeah, this is like very like really good to be able to talk about these things, and I think too, this conversation around kids, it is heavy, but it's not the same kind of heavy. I don't know how to explain it. I think that there's hope in it. There's hope, and there's light. And I think that kids are a huge untapped source of good. And I think that if we can help them, we're just gonna see it, and that's what we need. We need to see good. That's what my whole TV show is about.
Well, this is what I love that you said that, because that's exactly how I feel when I look at kids. Like, it's beauty, it's innocence, it's curiosity, it's creativity, it's all those parts that later on they may fade off, but that's the part that's the life of us. And
Yeah.
I see that when I see them. And I personally love engaging with kids more than adults for the most part, because
Oh,
they're honest.
okay.
They're they're unabashed. They're not like brazen. They're just, they are who they are. And you know what I mean? And it's so beautiful to see each little individual in that way.
Yeah.
As I told you, for me, it's been through dance mainly.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. Just like the work that you're doing, like you said, it's not that heavy. It is a reflection of them.
Yeah.
And so,
It's urgent.
you go ahead.
It's urgent, but I don't know. I just it's hard to think about the world changing. It's hard to think about the world being a better place. And so I don't. I think about kids. I just think about kids being better and doing better and better resources and access to what we didn't have. And the adults who are resonating with it too. It's like none of us were taught this stuff unless you were really lucky and you had parents who knew what they were doing, right? Or you had teachers who were on top of it, right? It's a minority. I didn't learn this stuff. I didn't learn this stuff until I was an adult.
And it's not like most parents don't want it. They're just not even aware.
Yeah,
It's like once they show up, they're like, oh my God, you know what I mean? It's not most people, most parents have good intentions. They want the best and they do what they can. It's like, well, wait, let's introspect for you too. And then
yeah,
when you awaken, it's like, how can that it's just awakening for everyone.
yeah.
It's beautiful for
And it's not about your failures, right? And I think when people get caught up, like I'm not doing enough, it's like we're still not listening to kids. You know what I mean? Like it's not about you, right? It's about we have these new resources. What are we going to do with them, right? What are we going to do with them? Like I don't ever bash teachers. I don't ever bash parents, right? Most of the time when I do like coaching client calls with parents, one of the first things I tell them is like, hey, thank you for how much you're standing up for your kid. Because they're always not doing enough, this and that, and here's all the ways that I'm failing, blah, blah, blah. My kid is struggling. I was like, your kid would struggle even if you were doing all of these things. Like your kid not your fault. Right? His struggle is their struggle, and maybe you do play into it and stuff like that. But we need to take ourselves out of that and to look at their struggle instead of saying, "What am I doing?" Right? Like not just asking ourselves, "What am I doing?" but also ask, "What's going on with?" Something I struggle a lot with someone in my life who I love is that they process everything through themselves, as in everything that someone says to them. It always comes back to, well, like if I said I'm having a really good time. Like I had a really good time like eating dinner at someone else's house. It was like a really nice night. And then the person was like, oh, are you saying like I don't cook for you? And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So if a kid says like I'm sad and parents are like, oh, when you're living in my home where I feed you and clothe you and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, that thing is true, but we need to listen to what they're saying. I'm sad, right? Not like I am the cause, you're the reason that I'm sad, like that. But that happens often. And so I just feel like the kids have been my saving grace. They've been the people that more than anything. I feel like I've got to grow up with kids. I hope, I can't wait until kids come back. I can't wait to see them as young adults. I can't wait to celebrate their accomplishments. I still talk to so many of them and so many of their families. They're a huge part of my heart, and they're a very special group. The kids I've worked with are a very special group of people to me because I know that I'm transitioning away from that. I know that the next part is going to look different. So I think my last thing I'll say is I just am very grateful. I feel very like full. My heart feels full. A chance to reflect like this. I can't journal. That's a fixed mindset. I struggle with journaling. Like I don't like doing it, but I process out loud. And so when I get to talk and have conversations like these, I listen to conversations. I like listen to podcasts and be like, oh my God, wow, that's what I said. Like that's my insight because I need to process out loud. So I'm really grateful that we got to do this. And I look forward to the next one. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing and creating spaces like this. It's seen and it's important. And these, these micro influences and these micro moments lead to these bigger things, and you're a part of the work, just like the people commenting and being here, part of the work. So I'm just grateful for everything, and also just really tired.
Ain't that the truth? Well, thank you so much. And thank you again to everybody who came on at whatever point and commented and engaged. Really, thank you so much. As Donovan said, you can connect with him. Those of you who may have joined towards the end, you can please take a look at his work. And it's just inspiring. And at the end of the day, how we're engaging with ourselves and our kids and those around us. That's where we can start, I think, right off the bat. So yeah, I just
Oh,
send so much love to you. Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes.
One of my kids just came in. Maximo, look.
Yeah.
Hold on, wait. I just have to show.
Oh, how sweet.
I will accept awards wearing this. She gave me this 3 years ago. You see it, Maximo?
Oh my God.
I love her. She's so great.
And you said you were gonna wear a award. You will wear it to.
Yeah, when I'm accepting awards for my programs, because I will get awards for my programs, I'm gonna wear it dressed up, and I'm gonna be wearing this still.
Oh, look at her. Yes, I love it. Oh my God. Yes.
That's we used to have an interesting way of communicating with each other when she was being tough on herself. I'm gonna embarrass you a little bit, Maximo, but she would say, like, self-deprecating stuff or whatever, joking around, and I would say, like, you're not gonna sit here and talk trash about my student like this. Like, if you keep talking about, like, my homie like this, you and I are gonna have an issue. And that was always just kind of our banter. I miss you, Brianna, a lot. That's why I wear this. Here it comes. Yeah, so I hope you are taking care of yourself, young lady. That's my homie. That's my homie. I got to teach her little sister the next year too, which was beautiful. But when you are older, Maximo, if you ever want to share anything that you're doing in your life, if you ever want to come say hi, I will always be happy to hear from you. I will never forget you. I don't know why people think that, but there's no way. Okay.
She said, I am. Don't worry.
Homie. That's a good ending.
It's fantastic. And there's no time limit with these things. To be honest, you go with what it is. As she was meant to be here for you to see, and you were wearing the bow.
It's right next to me too. I almost wore it in my Halloween costume last night, but I didn't want to lose it, so I left it at home. I'm serious. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff when I came from California, but I was like, I put this in a special box. I have like a couple of trinkets and stuff that kids gave me. Another kid who was in here earlier, he gave me his belt. He has like a really cool Mexican belt, and he gave it to me. And when he was in here, I should have told him, but I was like wearing it. This is great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Donovan. Thank you, everyone. Really. Thank you just for sharing and speaking and being here. And I will speak to you and hopefully see you soon.
Oh my gosh, yes, please. Let me tell you something. They told me I'm going to be the only person there. Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just had that because I cannot get over that. They were like, we think that you should move. So just like, I know we said we're going to stop, but I'll tell you all. I'm going to Costa Rica.
Oh, go.
One of my good friends paid for me to do a yoga retreat in Costa Rica, which is amazing and huge. And they called me because I booked a week, and they were like, we think you should pick another week because the week that you're going to be there, it will just be you. Like, no one else is going to be there except for the staff and stuff. And then these other weeks, there's going to be like 12 to 15 people. So you should come on those other weeks. And I was like, no way, dude. I want to be by myself. Are you kidding me?
That's the way.
Are you kidding? But I'll see you there. Okay.
Yes, unfortunately, because I'm there with my family, I won't be able to be on the retreats. Although I would love that as well. But we're gonna make time. I'm making this. This is happening.
It's pretty easy. I'm gonna send you messages about this later. But there's like a day trip that they plan where you get to do like volcanic mud baths and like horseback riding and zip lining and stuff. So I was gonna send you that to see if you wanted to do it with me.
You send me anything and everything. And we're gonna go from there. We'll do another chat from there.
Yeah, oh man, we'll have some fun. All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you to everybody, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you very much, Donovan. Again,
this is awesome. Good job.
No, to you. It's all you. You're the one talking. All right.
To us. Co-regulated to us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Bye. Get some rest. Get some
Yeah,
rest.
of course.
I don't know how to end this. Here we go. Thank you all so much.